Go ahead. So let's give everybody, a few minutes just to
show up,
sign on and show up. Yeah. Hi, Ann. Hi, Mian. And Mian. Hello. So glad you're there. You could just run this AMA, actually. You could. So we're just going to give everybody a few minutes to sign on because we have 30 people who signed up for the AMA, but a lot of people sign up so that they can listen to the recording later because they don't, it's hard to find, to be able to make it right at the time. So, hi, Ann, welcome. Yeah. So let's just give it 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Good. So I've already got the recording happening. And actually, let's just give it another minute and we can get started with just the initial things. Yeah. Okay. So
they're virtual snacks, Andrew. Yeah.
Okay. So hi Ann, hi Mian, hi Andrew. We have I'm Kelly and this is Charan, and we have a lot of people who've signed up for this AMA. It is being recorded because as I said previously, a lot of people sign up so that they can listen to the recording. If there's a question that you're asking and you really prefer that it not be recorded, just let me know and I will stop the recording for a moment and then start it up again. Because this recording does not only go out to the 30 people who registered, but also the 3,000 people on the mail list later. So, but I'm glad you can make it because Charan and I are very, very excited about this upcoming course, Assertiveness Training for Empaths. Mian in the yellow walled room has been a longtime member of, well, she participated in the class and then did the life lab afterwards. And so it's good to see you here. We said you could probably run this AMA with all that you've done with us. So briefly, I just want to chat a little bit about what AMAs are. Ask me anything. This is an EQUUS sponsored free webinar monthly series. It originally started as, it was just an idea I had for getting on once a month with the EQUUS community, and it was ask me anything. And it could be about running a small business or leadership development or personal life stuff or spiritual stuff. But then it kind of opened up. I was really inspired by a project called the Human Library, which is a project where people meet in these big event halls and they were able to check out a human book. And the book is a person who volunteers to sit at a table and really be an open book and answer questions and be in dialogue with people. And they tend to draw from marginalized people who represent marginalized communities. So you might have a person who is a library book for being an immigrant or being a minority of a minority race or being transgender or being a right-wing Republican or a left-wing Democrat, and just allowing people to safely engage in dialogue so that they can learn more about each other and have less fear. We also open up, so we've been doing that. We've had lots of guests on our monthly AMAs. They're very exciting. So I invite you to keep joining some of the other AMAs that we have each month. And we also use the time to promote or spend time with some of our upcoming courses. And that's what tonight's Ask Me Anything, or in this case, Ask Us Anything, is about. Charan is here with me. He is my co-facilitator and lead and co-designer of the course. And we love this course. It has been game changing for me personally to design the course, like really game changing. It has been game changing to lead the course, to see what has happened to others who have been a part of it. So tonight is all about just engaging in some of the content that assertiveness training for empaths features, and asking questions to myself and Charan about the course, asking questions to us about anything to do with assertion and empathy and some of the challenges that go along with that and some of the opportunities that go along with being an empowered empath. And so we'll go through just for the first 15 minutes, a little bit of how the course works, the syllabus and the curriculum, and then open the floor to questions. Have I forgotten anything, Charan?
No, I think it's a great introduction. Thanks,
Okay,
Kali.
fabulous. Yeah, so you know what I think, Ram, would be great. Could you lead us in just a couple of minutes of quiet before we get started? I think that just is the best way to start, since we always start our classes every week with this presencing. So over to you. I know I sprung it on you, but you're good with this.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, and just a word about the presencing. It's really something I like to do. I brought it into the group work because I do it with my, individual coaching clients. Just because we often come in, to a conversation or a webinar or a coaching conversation in a state with a lot on our mind, and it leaves out kind of some of the deeper part of our being. We can't feel into the question as much. So when we start with presencing, it's really calling on other parts of our nervous system, other parts of our consciousness, and just bring that all together so that the time together has a more power to the intentionality. So presencing is very simple. I can call it a presencing meditation. You can keep your eyes open or closed. It doesn't really matter. But sense into for a moment just the absolute simplicity of the fact that you know that you're here. This doesn't take any effort. It's obvious, it's natural. We rarely rest our attention there. So just decide to put aside a minute and not to be disturbed with thoughts of other things, thoughts of the world, any mental ideas, and just rest in yourself. And notice how presence doesn't have any preference. It doesn't need things to be a certain way. It doesn't argue with what is. You're just here. Notice that presence in its most fundamental and natural aspect is it's not disturbed by what is. And also sense from that place how we create a group field of presence. Those of us on this call at this moment, we're in contact with each other. There's a recognition there. Notice how you feel that inside. So from this place of resting with nothing to figure out, nothing to change, I think this is a great place to come into a conversation and investigation of our course. So, yeah, Kali, do you want to talk a bit about how this course came to be, why we formed this?
Yeah, and then I'll hand it to you too, because it was a really deeply personal. We started from a really deeply personal place, both you and I. That started from a conversation that you and I had. Charan and I have been friends for 30 years. We have been colleagues for a very long time. And we were just having a conversation together about what it's like to be empathic and what it's like to be a sensitive human being. And for me personally, the course started as my own for my own desire to become more skilled at healthy self-agency and healthy self-entitlement. I always had the feedback that people thought I was very direct and clear, but I knew that only sort of 2% of the real me was coming out. And I was also aware of certain patterns that were repeating in my life where that were just unsettling. And I just really wanted them to end once and for all. I had been in therapy, I'd done lots of coaching, and nothing was really switching in this area of assertion. And it didn't matter how cognitively, how much I understood things cognitively, it still didn't translate into behavior change. And habit change or the changes I wanted to see happening in my life. So this really began as a labor of love for myself to find answers and to make real change happen. And so many of my clients are, whether they realize it or not, are empathic, are sensitive. They tend to have values that are around caring for the whole rather than just the individual. And that can make things very complicated when you are working towards self-agency, because you literally feel the other. And so, yeah, secondly, I made it for my clients. So that's sort of the why for me. What about you, Charan?
I think I sort of remember having a conversation with you about this, and one of us threw out the idea like we should do an assertiveness training for empaths, just like kind of like casually mentioned it, and we're both like, wow, that's a great idea. And this course was born. I think from my part, there is that saying that we teach what we need to learn. And I would not have ever phrased it that I need to learn assertiveness for me as an empath, although I feel I've always been an empathic being. I think it was more my experience with a lot of clients. I found that those who are more sensitive and more empathic and more able to feel into the realities of others and the needs of others, in some ways would be best suited for leadership positions, but are the least likely to show up in those positions because of the self-doubt that often comes along with being very empathic and sensitive. And that was kind of an emergent idea for me. And I think that's where we were kind of having a conversation about when this idea of an assertiveness training for empaths came up. Then I found, and actually researching it and doing the work, I said, oh, this is totally also me. And I tell you, this is going to be our third time doing it. The changes that have happened in my life and my ability to like just assert self-agency and do it from a balanced place, because before it was very either or, either I'm really open and empathic or it's all about me. Learning to kind of modulate that, I call the aperture of empathy. The learning has been ongoing. The effect has been ongoing because once you see these things, it's there. And then just also, seeing the changes in everybody who's done the course, as Mian could attest, I'm sure. It's continually, honestly blowing my mind, and I'm really excited about this upcoming one we're doing, the new improved assertiveness training for empaths.
Yeah. We've added a couple of weeks because it was just so juicy. So I'm going to share and show the syllabus here. And so the course syllabus it's 14 weeks. There's a break. The class goes from September 2nd until December 16th, I believe is the date, every Friday, 9 to 11. and the weeks, and there is a break in between. And we find that the break is really important because the work is can be very dense and challenging. So let's see. So session 1, we'll just very briefly go through this, is an orientation. We have a questionnaire survey that helps get a sort of baseline of how you're showing up in the world. So you get an understanding of where you're starting from. Anything you want to add to that, Charan?
Yeah, it's really getting people oriented and actually starting the process. So like you said, there's the questionnaire, there's a self-assessment, there's going in more depth into the course syllabus, answering a lot of people's questions about, not only the content of the course, but how we do it, how it's structured. And we find just one entire session for that is really important. Mm-hmm. And it also helps, we want to create a crucible of learning, safety, all that. So that's being created, particularly in the first session. And then as we go on, there's a real intentionality of creating a safe learning space.
Yep. And you can take the next two, Charan.
Yeah. So the first, session 2, what is empathy? This is one of the new classes we're going to have, because we realized when we were doing it, we're just like, oh yeah, empathy. It's like ability to feel whatever. And as we dived into it more, we realized that empathy it's a pretty broad topic. There are different types of empathy. There's cognitive empathy, there's emotional or affective empathy, there's a kind of spiritual empathy. Each has its own benefits and drawbacks, its functional and dysfunctional aspects. There's, we cover topics about a little bit the neurobiology of empathy, etc. So we're giving that a whole class to itself this time. Session 3, the body is a barometer of self-awareness. I like that. I came up with that term, the body is a barometer, because it really gives you a reading of these kind of invisible forces. Very times you just have a feeling about something or a place or a person or whatever, but you can't really interpret what's going on. And so a big part of this course is a kind of somatic literacy, you can say, to start to really understand the language of our own bodies and what we're being told by these sensations, and to start to learn to distinguish between what's happening in the environment around us, what is that triggering in us, what might it be referring to in terms of a trauma from the past. So that's session 3, and it's really foundational for the entire course. Session
4 is we talk about, what is assertiveness anyway, and what, just as importantly, what it isn't. And we really discern between what is an empowered way to assert oneself in the world and what's a way that is actually disempowering and self-sabotaging. And so we discriminate between those two so that you can really get behind what assertion is. And then we have session 5, which is a really special one. What we found is that empaths tend to attract often challenging personality types like narcissists. And so we assist people to discern if their relationships that they're in are worthy of the kind of engagement, that healthy engagement that you deserve. Or is it actually the variety where you're being preyed upon as an empath, and what to do about that? Because oftentimes people don't understand that they are a kind of magnet for that kind of personality style, and that requires a different kind of assertion than working with somebody or relating to somebody who's healthy and mature. And then over to 6, Ron.
Yeah, care and feeding of empaths is just what it sounds like. Empaths tend to be more sensitive, so we're processing a lot more psychic input, psychic information than people who are not as porous energetically and emotionally. So, the requirement for rest and proper nutrition and proper self-care, we just go really deeply into that, and what are some possibilities, and we work with people on kind of developing their own kind of reframing a self-care routine. Session 7, boundaries, lines in the sand, and self-agency. This is a real game changer. We go into boundaries. What are boundaries? And it's very, very interesting what we found, that typically one is told, setting up against something, but actually a boundary is a statement of self. Lines in the sand, self-agency, all of that. We really go into it from theoretical and somatic perspective, and this shifts a lot for people. Yeah.
And then because session 7 was so massive, we broke it into 2, and session 8 is more on ways of practicing self-agency. So that's just an expansion of that, beyond just boundaries, but how you create alliances with others and create different communities around yourself, and design different communities around yourself to who can really meet you where you are. Session 9 is about candor, care, and challenge, being robust and grounded and present in the face of difficult and challenging conversations. We do a lot of role play in that course.
Session 10, giving and receiving feedback, big topic. One that many people are uncomfortable about, empathic or not. So, how to do that from a balanced place, how to do it from a respectful place, how to receive feedback and not shut down, whatever it is. There's a lot in that. That's a juicy one. And then we get into the kind of final, the last 3, and before the wrapping it up one, but we take it into a bigger dimension in a way, the awakened empath in conflict. So we're using language of awakening, of kind of empowered spiritual embodiment, and how to show up that way in the inevitable conflicts of human life.
Yeah, and so that's 11, 12, 13 is that there's what we call the development of the empowered empath. And because empaths have a natural capacity for advocating for for understanding what it's like in someone else's shoes, for sensing into other people's realities, and for kind of understanding a more holistic picture for the entirety of the system, the relationship, the group, they naturally make wonderful leaders, but they don't often think of themselves as leaders because they tend not to imagine themselves as bold or directive or clear, and they can tend to be folks who want to be the person behind the leader or next to the leader. But point of fact, empaths are positioned to be very trustworthy leaders and people who can actualize their visions once they realize they can be direct and clear in a balanced way. So we really kind of use that last part of the course to bring forward a actualization of who you are meant to be, with a lot more backbone and clarity and honesty and authenticity. And then we do the review.
Yeah.
So and we can answer any questions you have about that.
Yeah, and I just add about the syllabus, we do have we have these topics and we have the classes well designed, but we leave a lot of space for emergent learning, because that's where it really happens. We want this to be a living learning experience based in your day-to-day, most human, like where the rubber meets the road experience. So we give a lot of place for that emergent process.
True. So some of the components of the course, what's not on here is community. The learning community becomes very robust. We have you engage with each other in between classes and role play with each other and challenge each other and coach each other and be there for each other and be allies for each other. So that, I would say, is part of the secret sauce of what makes this course really powerful, is the empowerment of that community. And of course, we do meditation and self-awareness, somatics, experiential processes, neuro rewiring, where we really work at rewiring your brain and your neural networks to work towards healthy practices and healthy habits. Go ahead, Ron, take the rest.
Relationship lab, that's the term we came up with, that your relationships are your laboratory for this stuff. You're learning in your life. So how do you apply it? What are the challenges and successes you face? And then bring that back to class. And we put aside discussion time for that with every class. Homework and reading, video watch. Yes, pretty obvious. We select readings and some videos with every class. Dialogue, yes. Role play, we do in class. Also, we give you some assignments for role play. The one-to-one coaching and support with peers, that's what Kelly was talking about a little while ago about creating the community. So you will be paired off with people in the course through the over the course of the course. Does that make sense? And so you really get to know each other well. And then afterwards, we have this life lab that you can sign up for afterwards. It's an additional fee. We do, people sign up for 6 months at a time. We keep it going, and it's people who have done the course. So we already have people from the first 2 cohorts in it. And it's, all I can say is it's really powerful because people are showing up as embodied, empowered empaths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't just leave you hanging at the end.
Yeah. Great. So I think that we can start to open the floor to some questions from Charan. And,
Yes.
the questions can be anything to do with empathy and assertion. Does not have to be about the course unless you have specific questions about the course. So we'll just open the floor. And since we have a small group, you can just unmic yourself and ask. And we did have some people write some questions in. So I think I'll just start. Go on.
If anyone on here has a question, but you're not sure if you feel comfortable asking it, just check. Because this is exactly the sort of thing we'll be working with. Is it's like, oh, how do I feel okay showing up? Is it okay to really ask this in a group? What will people think? This is exactly the sort of stuff that we want to address in the course. So again, I encourage people, if you do have something. Mian, was that a yeah?
Was over here.
Yeah.
Kelly mentioned doubt, and then there was something else about. That's really what I want to bring to the table right now. It's like, that cognitive piece. It's like kind of, I know that doubt, whatever your perception is, doubt isn't useful here, but I still have it. And I just was wondering if, that's just part of my reality, right? I have all this wonderful learning, and I have some assertiveness in some areas, and I'm not so great at it in other areas. And so, doubt seems to be a big one these days.
Mm-hmm.
Doubting myself, doubting, decision making perhaps, or whatever, it's wonky.
Yeah. It's wonky.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to my mind is that as long as we're identified with our personality, there's going to be doubt, because it's an unstable structure. So part of what I would say, I'm curious if you've been able to work with the somatic focusing exercises to kind of check in yourself. Well, what is that experience really like that I'm calling doubt, and how can I create some space about that?
Yeah, what comes up right away is this. It's a little bit of a habit, right? Yeah. Which Kelly also mentioned. Yeah. And within that habit, there's familiarity, and there is also a belief around familiar, that familiar is safe, even when it's not good for me. So there's this really kind of awesome dance, if I'm willing to take the time to sort of sit with it and negotiate my way, through it, really. And it's a little bit humorous. I think I will admit that, and irritating, right? So it's like, okay. And it's I think just getting it out, I'm already feeling a lot better about it. It's like, okay, yeah. I can do this, Yeah.
And, and this is sort of how Charan and I work. We often bring things from a completely different place, So I'll bring in a horse training brain here. You can have an expert horse who's done all the top level Olympic moves, and every now and again, you have to take the horse back to the basics. You just have to go back to, this is walk, this is trot, this is canter, this is stop. And so the doubt arises, I imagine, because you've already had a certain level of expertise and success and victory in asserting yourself. And then when you need a review or whatever, then that somehow means that you're not something, right? Why am I still here? So,
Yeah.
right. So back to micro habits, back to somatics, go back to your basics.
Yeah, and, it's a wonderful it's a wonderful practice. If I can share that, a metaphor of like spiraling out and just kind of like not knowing what to do, this practice of just getting really simple and just stopping, and dropping and dealing with what's here. It's effective every time.
Mhm.
It can usually cut through the baloney that I
Mhm.
might be generating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bologna generation cutting through. You're cutting the bologna, you're slicing it. It's good. And I would want to point out, you did something when we started to inquire into is what you did is you deconstructed doubt. And I find that very, very powerful. Not just, we do that a lot in this class, but also in transformational coaching. We have this idea there's something called doubt, and we label it and we get really into how do I deal with this thing? But if you take away the word doubt, what is it? Suddenly it starts to move, and there's space and there's a possibility of transformation. So, and you are like, you're just, very powerful on that level, I can say.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're very committed. And I'm glad you said stop, drop, and deal. Stop, drop, and deal, Andrew and Anne, is a process we brought into the assertiveness course, which is just about when we notice something showing up in our body, some sensation, maybe we don't even understand it, but it's catching our attention, that instead of just rolling through it or doing the usual reaction or numbing out or whatever it might be, that you stop, get present with it, drop in and metabolize it and process it. And we go into a whole thing of what metabolizing means, but that's what Megan's referring to is stop. We say stop, drop, and deal, stop, drop, and feel, but it's one of our things. Any other questions from me and or Andrew or Anne? Okay.
I just have a very practical question. I appreciate you presenting the syllabus and explaining the course. I've been interested in the course for, I guess, since it first came out. But I just have a logistical question. Right in the middle of the course, I'm going to be out of the country probably for about 2 weeks. Is that an issue or a problem, or what do you think?
That is if you're just out of the country for 2 weeks, that is not an issue. Usually everybody is out of the course for once. Something shows up once. We record everything. And as long as you just commit to listening to the recording, and then there's the homework in between that you can participate with. So that's not going to interfere in your learning process.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, I would encourage you that if there's Wi-Fi where you'll be traveling, you can tune in from anywhere.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I'll be, there's hours of difference time-wise.
Right.
It's 8-hour difference. So, I'll just have to figure all that out. I'm just trying to,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
see
but
if
it
I
shouldn't be a problem. It becomes a problem if you're, if you're 3 or 4 classes away, then we would recommend you wait. But if it's one or two, it's not going to be a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's a host of questions, Charan, and since this is being recorded and some of these came in from those folks, let's go ahead and we can pause if anybody has questions that show up in response to these questions. How about that?
Sure.
What's the balance between theory and practice in the course?
I mean, I would say it's more practice oriented. We try to give a really clear and good theoretical foundation to everything that we're presenting, but we don't find that transformation necessarily happens through understanding theories. In fact, just that alone will definitely not transform you. But without the theoretical framework, the process kind of can get very unfocused. So I don't know if I could give it a ratio, but it's probably something like, 30-70-ish theory to practice.
30 being
theory.
Yeah,
Maybe 25-30% theory.
Yeah, for sure. And I would add that the theory is backed up by evidence. So this isn't just theory because we thought it was a good idea. We have a lot of resources that back up the theory and the concepts that we bring forward. Yeah.
I would like to add that it was mind-blowing. I think a lot of the information that I learned, that theoretical, that scientific based, it cracked me wide open. So very, very useful.
Yeah, interesting that the theory also cracked you wide open. I think that sometimes when we're really, really in a learning process, particularly in a group, there's an energy that happens that begins the transformation. So that's not necessarily two things. Thanks for that, Mian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't really think I'm an empath, but I could use some help with an associate. Will this still be a good course for me?
Help with associate?
An associate. I didn't write the question, but yeah, anyway, they're saying they're not an empath, but they could use some help with someone in their life. Would this course be good for me?
Yes.
And I would say one of the things that I think Martha Beck said this, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you're having issues with an associate, then those issues are probably showing up elsewhere as well. And it's interesting for me how people get a little caught up with, am I an empath? Am I not an empath? I find sensitive people ask those kinds of questions because they don't want to overstate who they are. People who are less sensitive aren't even going to ask the question. So if you're even asking the question, am I an empath? Will this work for me? There's some ways I would like to show up better in my life, more authentic, more honest, more clear than absolutely this course will assist you.
Yeah. And on that, I'm just kind of reflecting here. Although the name is Assertiveness Training for Empaths, I think that somebody who doesn't really consider themselves an empath, everybody's got, unless you're like completely on the, malignant narcissist end of the spectrum, most normal people have at least some degree of empathic, nature. So the course is really about the balance between this kind of open, more feminine quality of empathy and the really focused, more masculine quality of assertion. How do we balance these forces in our psyche, in our body, in our behavior?
Yeah, can you say more about that, Ram? Because I know this morning you were having a pretty big download on that.
And I had like kind of flash this morning about, what are empathy and assertion really about, and why do we feel we have to bring those into balance? And I'm a big fan of the tantric theory, which is really about the universal forces of masculine and feminine, and how we can navigate those in a way very consciously in our lives. That's already going on all the time. That's, we will get into in the course a little bit, but it's what makes up our experience, the kind of self-other, the attraction, the aversion, the drive and fear, all that stuff. So I was reflecting how empathy is really, it's a very feminine quality. It's expansive. It's very compassionate. It's porous. It's nurturing. And assertiveness, if you think about it in a really healthy way, it's a kind of archetypal masculine quality of focus and drive and getting things done. And it also has qualities of helping the other. It can be used in that service, or it can be used in service to the self. Whereas empathy, typically one doesn't think about using it in service to oneself. So the balance of the two of those is really what the course is about. And I have this image of an aperture that I bring in sometimes, and a camera can be a narrower or wider. And so it's not about finding, the perfect balance and just staying there. It's about having the ability to understand these two aspects and dance with whatever's happening in the moment in our lives and our relationships.
I would love to add something, if that's okay.
Yes.
I didn't think I was an empath. I don't know that I would really just say I'm an empath. I don't know that I would say that. But at the beginning of the course, I think I wrote Kelly and I was like, I want to take this class, but I'm not really sure I'm an empath, one of those qualifying things. And I'll tell you, one of my biggest takeaways from this experience was that it allowed me to sort of just embrace my feeling being. I am a feeling being. And to hold those feelings with confidence in the world, instead of hiding them, pretending they weren't here, not knowing how to handle them. And I kind of lean towards everyone has empathic elements to them, to their beings. And this course just really can invite you to know yourself in a beautiful way, and so yes is the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. That was
Meehan.
really
I'm so
beautifully-
glad you shared that.
Yeah.
In a way, it is a course of it's part of this self-transformation is understanding and naming what's already there.
Mm.
We are not given an education in our inner psychic workings very much in school. They don't teach you this stuff. So you're kind of left to fend for yourself. And if you're somebody who is a feeling person, it's like, well, how am I going to deal with all these weird emotional inputs and energetic stuff and interpersonal stuff when I'm supposed to be focused on my job, So it is very much an education of self.
Somebody asked the question, Andrew, you didn't raise your hand. You weren't raising your hand, were you? Okay. How does the course help people overcome the fear of taking action? And I want to combine it with another one. What level of commitment do you require from the participants? Because they're related. So we won't kid you. There is workload to the class, and there's a reason for that. For decades, myself included, we've been practicing living another way. We've been again and again and again practicing ways of being that may not necessarily serve us. And the only way that you can deviate from that well-rutted road and find new ways to be is by practicing another way. And so the homework is designed to take some time, attention, and care into dedicating a new way of being for you. And so how people get over the fear of engaging with others, like, difficult conversations, setting a boundary, creating a new alliance, is by going out there and doing it and doing it again, and being very aware while you're doing it, what's happening in your body, really slowing down. Am I, wow, I noticed the very minute that I told someone that I needed something from them, that I noticed the disappointment on their face, and I noticed the impact it had on my body and how my whole system went alight with anxiety. And to slow that down and to metabolize those sensations so they don't inadvertently sabotage you. And so we send people out there into their life with the backup of their peers and us to advocate for themselves in ways that they hadn't considered, period, or hadn't considered possible.
Yeah, I'd say another piece of that is, doing self-development work, doing transformational work on oneself. Like Kali said, it requires consistency, and it doesn't just happen by itself. So one thing the course gives is some accountability, like, okay, you're going to do this, and we're going to come back together, and we're going to hold you accountable to doing this work on yourself. In a way, people who join there's an unspoken contract. You're doing this because you're ready to change. And we're here for you, and we just don't want people to come in and take it casually.
Yeah.
And
and what happens is those who take it casually tend to leave quite early. And what it does is it creates an even safer container for those who don't take it casually, and that everything suddenly ratchets up another level of safety, and like, we got this, and we're doing this, and we're not alone in it, and we're gonna commit to this. And because Charan and I know that a group is only as strong as its weakest link, and so the coursework is designed for no weak links, so we can all be in it together. Would you say that that was your experience, Mian? Yeah.
That was yes. I can lip read.
Yeah, yes, yes. It was everything you can imagine, right? And it was exciting and life-giving at times. And, you know, probably, I don't know, there were moments where I didn't want to do the homework, you know, I mean, parts of me didn't want to do it, you know, and it's like, okay, how am I going to work through this? And I agree with everything you just said. It's, you know, just thinking it isn't enough. You've got to get in there and act it.
Yeah. I'll pause for a second if there's anything that's surfacing that somebody wants to say or ask before I move on to this massive list of questions. Okay. Can you speak about your own professional expertise in the fields of trauma, empathy, and assertion? Let me hand that one to you, Ram Charan.
I've done part of Peter Levine's trauma resolution training, the somatic experiencing, and we draw from that pretty heavily in the course. I haven't done the full 3 years to become an SE practitioner, but I have a good enough understanding of the field of kind of somatic trauma work that I'm pretty confident that I can bring across a good foundational understanding to people. And I did that initially as part of craniosacral training, which is very much about, yes, it's an osteopathic technique, but it teaches about how we can hold presence in a way for people's process. Also with the empathic part, I found that I do a lot of kind of mind-body work with people. I was doing massage therapy for a long time, craniosacral. I still do a fair bit of that, but I found that the skills that were really helping me in that were not just the physical manipulation skills. It was my ability to be present with people and dialogue with them. And that's how I got into coaching. So I have that foundation of, you know, years of meditation, doing body work with people, really learning to sense the subtleties of people's responses, sensing my own intuition, developing my own empathy. And then, you know, the assertion piece, I'd say it really came across in researching this course. I don't have particular professional expertise in that, although I suppose in the coaching field, I do explore with people what are the blocks to them taking steps to achieve their goals. Kali?
Yeah, awesome. Also coaching, facilitation, and I would say what kind of comes in and informs all of that work is 54 years on top of a horse. And horses are deeply empathic beings that also embody assertion, and to be under their strict tutelage has taught me a lot about energy and sensations and emotional intelligence, and in a way, in a sane container, because that balance is there in the equine world, that I can then lend towards the human world. The indigenous perspective is also very balanced between masculine and feminine, and so that piece is in there for me too. And just working for decades with people who are sensitive and empathic, but who are naturally gifted and have visions to manifest in their world. And also, I would say just my own life journey of struggling, being sensitive, and struggling, literally feeling other people's emotions. And so that would muddy my own waters, and just really, really working very hard towards understanding what's at work in me, what's the shadow side of empathy, what is the shadow side of compassion. And so that those life experiences and dancing with a couple of narcissists, including my father, those kinds of experiences taught me a lot about that world. Yeah,
so, you know, I'm just reflecting on that. There's the the idea of professional expertise as trainings and all this, but actually a lot of our professional expertise comes from our personal expertise.
Yeah. Yep. And we bring up trauma. Actually, I would like to riff off that. When we say trauma, we don't mean like trauma, capital T. Everybody who is born on Earth experiences some kind of trauma or traumas. And it can happen, we can be traumatically impacted by an event that was very benign, but it still had an impact on us as children. So we understand that trauma creates a kind of neural tangle internally that can often prevent clear, balanced assertion. So the beginning of the course, we do become trauma informed and just look at ways that our neural networks light up when certain events happen, or we consider certain options for ourselves, and why they light up and how to metabolize them. So it's an important part of the journey, because that's stored in the body. That's not stored in the memory or the brain.
It's stored in the nervous system. And trauma, if you understand it in the way that, where our presentation of it, and this is coming a lot again from Peter Levine's work and just our own understanding, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's unresolved trauma that gets to be the issue.
Right.
So that's why we bring in a lot of the somatic piece, because the more somatically literate you become, the more able you are to stay with and metabolize your sensations that are manifestations of a triggered nervous system, and recognize that begins the resolution of the traumas and the integration of the energy. So that energy, which was being used to keep these traumas in balance, that energy then becomes available for you for your empowerment. It's really taking the shadow stuff. We work with some of that stuff. We get kind of down and dirty with it and bring it to light and transform it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Ian. Does this to your experience? Since
Right.
what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I want to try to simplify. It changed my relationship, right? This course changed my relationship with that which scared me.
Yes.
So, in learning to, and it kind of promoted curiosity, inquiry. It's like, oh, what else is in there, kind of thing. And I just think that in itself has completely changed my life.
By the way, we didn't ask Mian to come on this call. We just came. So thank you.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Yeah. And I'm curious, why did you come onto this AMA, Mian, since you're already so much a part of the assertiveness, the empath community?
I've been, I thought I would learn something, I just figured,
Have you?
Yes. And B, I still learning. B, I thought I kind of just hold it, I want to take the course again, and then I'm just kind of holding it back here, is it going to be this time? Now you said you added 2 more classes. I'm like, hey, I want some of that. So a little bit of that too.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. A couple of people are taking it again. And it's not because they didn't feel like they didn't get enough, in terms of like something didn't get fulfilled, but it's like they just want to be in that space again. And I just feel fortunate that I get to be in that space again and again and again.
Well, I think that's it. You've mentioned it a couple times about how there's just continued learning, and it's just like flexing those muscles. It's attractive.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, let's do it again.
Yeah, great. Well, I wanted to say about this particular round of the course that we're going to do. You know, Kali and I were talking this morning, and I don't know the words we use, but you know, we're talking about how it's really this kind of emergent thing that seems to have a life of its own. It's like a living organism almost, this course, and it's starting to show us what it's about. And we both have a feeling that it's on the verge of something much bigger. So I have a really just powerful intuition about this particular cohort we're going into. I think this is going to transition it from, you know, what we've been working on to a much more expanded and clear and empowering body of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, we're thinking book and online course, you know,
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Because it's just so powerful.
Flashcards.
Really, huh?
Flashcards.
Games, parlor game.
So we have 5 minutes before we're gonna let everybody go. We have a handful of spaces left. The first time we kept it very limited. Then the next time we really opened it up and we went, whoa, that's way too many people. And now we know the sweet spot is 12. So it's going to be limited to 12 people just to maximize and optimize the learning, the community, the camaraderie, the fellowship, the time that everybody gets. And we have now 5 spaces left. You know, so jump if you're ready. And I think that's it. Is there any closing comments, questions, anything before we go?
Anne, has this been useful and interesting for you, this conversation?
Yeah, very interesting. And I think it's a really interesting time of year to explore these ideas. You know, I mean, I'm thinking of Persephone going, going underground and looking at the shadow. And I think it's a perfect time of year. At least that's the way I look at it. So.
Yes, we talked about that actually, how it's hard to get people to do this sort of thing in the middle of the summer because they're out there. Suddenly as the you know, squirrels start to gather their acorns for the winter, people are like, oh wait, what are we doing? Great. Well, it'd be great if you join. I'd love that. Andrew, are you feeling motivated to, you know, get involved with this EQUUS?
I think I am.
Fantastic.
This is fantastic. And we also, Anne, to your point about the time of year, we did deliberately time it to sort of that the holidays arrive towards the end, because boy, do the holidays bring up stuff for people.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's great. It becomes grist for the mill, and but also you're equipped enough. You don't drown, but you have lots of opportunity.
Yeah. So you get to practice over Thanksgiving, and then we come to the last few classes, and then you really have the hard stuff, and you know, like December.
You graduate with the winter holiday.
Yeah, your PhD project is dealing with the winter holidays.
Right. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, everybody, thank you so very much for your time and for your interest and for coming and being on our AMA. And we hope to see you at the class. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Everybody. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.